So good evening, Graduado Dragão. Thank you very much for coming here to the Life Capoeira.
Yeah.
So let's right in. Tell me, how did you get started with this wonderful art?
So for myself, it was all the way back in university for myself. So growing up, I came from a bit of a country bumpkin kind of area of the world with not a lot of sort of outside of school extracurricular stuff at my disposal, and family circumstances couldn't really facilitate it either. But in my later teens, I did gymnastics for a while. I became a trampolinist for about a good 3-4 years, so I really liked acrobatics. But growing up, I'd always been a big fan of, through my dad, through things like Bruce Lee and Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I'd always wanted to try martial art, but just never had the opportunity to. So it wasn't until I got to university that I started dabbling in a few classes, various things, bits and bobs. And a fellow classmate actually said, well, you know what, I've tried something I don't know if you haven't tried. It's called capoeira. I know you're a big fan and you want to try martial arts, but this also has sort of gymnastic-like elements to it. So why don't you give it a go? So went to a class at Coventry University that my mestre, Contemesse Angel, was teaching at the time. Went to a few classes, and yeah, the rest is history now. That was all the way back in 2009.
I started in 2008. Were you hooked in your first lesson as well?
Very much so. Very much so. I will admit I was very sore after my first one. Had a bit of a John Wayne gait to my walk for maybe 5 days afterwards, but really enjoyed, the movement, how unique it was, the energy of those classes, and also the freedom within them as well. Because at the time I was doing a few other traditional martial arts, but with traditional arts and martial arts, you've got your things like your katas and forms you have to perform, and you almost sort of stagnate through them until you're grading, until you move on to a next set of movements. Whilst capoeira classes, I found that never one class was identical to the other. So it had like so much diversity and opportunity to just explore as freely as you please.
What got you to then take that next step of running your own classes? How long had you been doing capoeira before they started?
I think so. I started in 2009, and it wasn't until about 2015, about 6 years later, till I started thinking about teaching classes. Prior to that, when I was still living down in Coventry and finished my degree, I was still living in the area, working in the area. But as I started gaining more experience and becoming a more sort of senior member of the group, started transitioning into dabbling into teaching. So maybe a lot of beginner classes and smaller classes that we had within the area, particularly when my mess was away, either across seas, giving workshops or other workshops within the UK, or, maybe just if family sickness things cropped up, just stepped in. That was probably around the time I got my Graduado card in 2014. So prior to moving to Manchester and teaching, between 2013 I started dabbling, and then 2014 I started doing it a bit more frequently. And by the time I moved to Manchester, just sat down, had discussion. Obviously Manchester's quite a thriving city for capoeira, a lot of groups, but my mess would have found it a big shame if I'd left the group. So he sort of sat me down and talked to me and said, I think this could be a good opportunity for you to try teaching and develop that skill set in itself within the art. so yeah, from then I just started one class a week in the city centre, and haven't stopped since.
How have you found it with the, I don't know if competing is the right word, the other groups? Do you get along and sort of work together? Is it a bit of both in terms of some groups being a bit more insular?
Yeah, I feel quite fortunate. The Manchester community is really open and diverse. So when I first started, I made a conscious effort to reach out to other teachers in the area. Predominantly at that time, I believe it was Professor Seb and Monsieur Valgier in the area, and they were very receptive, very warm and welcoming. So they would frequently offer me support and advice, and from there that expanded as well. So I have a lot of thanks for Monsieur Valgier in particular, because he gave me some of my first opportunities as being an announced guest at events, which was an opportunity to, you know, showcase my capoeira, but also just inform people of me being an instructor within the area. And then I started spreading my wings and started meeting some people outside of the Manchester area, and broadening across the northwest, and got to meet teachers like Contemessa Negoteta, he's been really great and supportive with me all the way up here. He's been willing to come down to classes to train with me and give classes for my students, you know, with just as a nice genuine favor, which has been lovely. And even some of the guys over in Liverpool, there's a great group called Capoeira for All, and they do great work with community and young kids, and particularly a lot of teaching around the culture of capoeira in Brazil as well. And they gave me some great opportunities to teach and cover their classes, do some projects with a few schools in the Manchester area as well, just again to spread my portfolio. As of now, it's not necessarily, we don't compete. Everyone, I make a habit of routinely catching up with people, dropping down to their classes and keeping in touch with one another. We're hopefully in the process of having some more frequent joint group holders just to get the community all together.
Right.
But it does have its struggles on the other side, because at the moment, you know, we have anywhere between 6 to 7, I think, different teachers and groups teaching in the city centre. So it's very saturated, which means that you've really got to knuckle down and to really promote your classes and get a good student base and maintain that student base. But other than that, the community is just everything I could have asked for moving up here.
Brilliant. I think that's one of the things that drew me to capoeira as well, as the community. And we met in Swansea at one of Mestre Maxwell's events. Yeah. Mestre Accordion was the guest. I think that week following it, I set up my classes, and
oh wow,
not long after that you were setting up yours, and I think we first kind of really got to know each other through some sort of emails about sharing experiences, how we, you know, setting up and starting and running a group. What have been some of your sort of favorite events and capoeira legends that you've met in your time?
Oh wow, there's been some quite big ones I've quite enjoyed. Like, I did enjoy that Mestre Accordion one. That was a really great opportunity to meet, you know, a legend in the art, and not just share capoeira, but also share music and some of his history and his involvement with the art. That's been really great. And through that opportunity as well, I got to meet some really great people, you know, like Mestre Maxwell. It was good to finally meet him, because I had been aware of some of the projects that he's done, like some of the great book projects and things. So it was great to finally meet him to just discuss and relish in the success of some of those. Another one that stands out, which managed to collect a lot of varying capoeiristas in the UK and had a really great energy, was, I believe it was Mestre João Grande came down to Capoeira Club London and worked with Mestre Poncinho.
Couldn't attend.
Yeah, that was a really, really great event as well, to meet another big icon in the art, but also just meet such a large variety of individuals within the capoeira community. And a last one I can think of, which wasn't necessarily an event, but just an opportunity we had, where during one of our Brazilian culture weeks, we got Mestre Deputado and Mestre Andorinha over in the UK to give some really heavy workshops and courses in regional capoeira, which was a really humbling experience, thinking, you know, at that point I'd probably had about 10 years under my belt and I couldn't be surprised with much else. But well, yeah, that was an experience, a lot of new material, a lot of stuff we'd never done before, and worked very, very hard to the bone. But it was, yeah, a very, very enjoyable experience.
Nice. And what are you working towards now yourself with your own sort of personal sort of capoeira? What goals, if you have any, or are you just trying to see where the path takes you?
Yeah, I'm quite open to where the path takes me. I think that's the benefit personally for myself, being a part of such a smaller individual group in capoeira. I feel like it's given me a lot of freedom to spread my wings and, you know, just visit and speak with varying people within the UK capoeira community, just to broaden my knowledge, my understanding, you know, whether that's through the physical art or whether it's the understanding of the music and the culture and the history behind it all. And with that, all I could really ask for is just to, like most people, they just want to establish, you know, a good solid group. Like, I would love to have a good solid group in the Manchester area and hold frequent gradings for myself with my students. That's something I'm always aspiring to. But also it's about just giving back to anyone else who steps through the door or in the community. So I'd like to still, over the past year through the pandemic, I've been fortunate to get involved with varying projects, whether that's been in schools, or I've had some opportunities with some dance academies to share some capoeira movements with contemporary dancers, just to build on their vocabulary. So, you know, similar opportunities like that, I would love to keep maintaining, just so that I can share the art I love. And if people want to get more involved with that, they can. But at the same time, also want to give people the opportunity to sample it and learn from it, and maybe just build it into their own practices, you know, to just offer some joy and some diversity, or just improve physical and mental well-being, and giving them some different revenues to explore to improve those aspects of their life.
Nice. I think you touched on a really important bit there, is the sort of the traveling around and that community. I think also, I don't know about yourself, but one of the challenges coming to capoeira, but without being Brazilian, obviously it's such a big part of Brazilian culture, is kind of fitting into that. And obviously in Brazil, it's very easy to find capoeiras and a big community close to you.
Definitely.
Whereas obviously in the UK, and certainly hearing in things like Only the Strongest podcast with capoeiristas from America, travel is a sort of an essential component to that. And I think it is one of the great community building tools that we have here in the UK for helping
Most definitely.
and so where were you next traveling to? Have you got any dates in your diary where our listeners may be able to meet and play or train with you?
At the moment, I believe there's 3 that I know of that I know of so far, but I always keep my eyes peeled through the community. Excuse me. So first of all, there is a capoeirista from Capoeira London. Apologies if I get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he recently got baptized as Professor Zumbi. And he recently moved up to the northwest area over, I could be plucking the years out of thin air, but from what I can recall, I know that he's been in the area for possibly anywhere between 3 to 4 years. And he set up a class in Leeds. And I've always been meaning to go over there, but never had the opportunity. But he's established a really good class over there, had some really dedicated students who've been with him a few years, and he's fortunate enough to have his first batizado for these students. So it's going to be one of his first major events. So as a member of the Northwest area, and we cross paths all the time, I plan on going up there. I think it's middle of May for that, only from the Friday for myself, but I believe it's an event going from Friday to Saturday. He's got a lot of great guys from Capoeira London group going up there, including his Mestre Hiram, and even Mestre Accordion is going to be there, which so if there are other capoeiristas in the Northwest area who've not had the opportunity to go and meet Mestre Accordion, I know he does come and frequently visit the guys at Capoeira London, but Capoeira Group Club London, but with an opportunity like this up in the Northwest, and like us when he came to Wales, a bit closer to home for myself, I just jumped on the opportunity. Other than that, I've had some independent capoeiristas reach out to me from London, at Cambridge, actually, my hometown, who are starting to build this great project where maybe once every month or full moon, they're going to hire out a sports hall in the city centre for about a good 4 or 5 hours, and just invite anyone and everyone who wants to train, but also give them the opportunity to teach and share in a very relaxed environment their knowledge, and just share it with one another, train with one another, and have a holiday and just enjoy some time together, which I really liked, because teaching in itself is a skill set in itself, and having the opportunity to do it in a nice controlled environment with people who may have done it before and some who haven't, just to give them the opportunity to trial and test that skill set, build on it, and also get something in return by teaching others and learning from them. Oh, sorry, recovering from a cold. And lastly, I believe we're in the process of putting a Latin America Week project in place down in Exeter in October. So we're in the process of potentially reaching out to get grants to pay for that. But if we do, we're going to have a whole week's worth of Latin American workshops, which will include a lot of capoeira, where we'll have the likes of Mestre Ephraim from America. And I believe we're also looking into getting Mestre Borges over as well.
Nice. Well, I think the last question I like to leave my guests with is, what is capoeira? It's a very big question, but how would you try and answer that?
Wow. Yeah. To me, it's a multitude of things. You know, it's an art form, but almost you can almost not even put a label on it. You know, there's so much varying aspects to the art form that you can explore in all sorts of different avenues. You know, there's clearly the physical side, all the acrobatics and things like that. There's the music, there's the language, and then there's just all that thriving culture behind it, about, you know, how it came to be, what it means to the Brazilian community now, and all the rituals relating to that. And, you know, some of those rituals may have some negative connotations, but it's still very important to, you know, understand those and talk about those, because it's important to know where this culture came from and acknowledge that as you move forward. And I try my best to share all of that knowledge with anyone that I come into paths with. Very important to share all that. You know, I can't claim to be an expert in all the fields, and I'll make mistakes along the way, but you know, that's a part of life, and you can do nothing but learn from those, work on those, and build from those, just to ensure everyone gets the genuine experience of the art and fully comprehend and understand how rich and rewarding it is to be a part of it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to when our paths can cross again in real life. It's always a pleasure to meet you, whether virtually or in a hodder. Is there any final thing you'd like to say?
Just thank you ever so much, Kung Fu, for having me on today. It's really appreciated, you know, to share my thoughts and experiences, but also I'm looking very much to seeing who else you have take part and share their experiences, just so that, you know, build a community, understand one another, understand each other's philosophies and thoughts about the art. Yeah, and it's always a pleasure to speak to yourself. You know, I've got a lot of admiration, respect for yourself. You know, you've been very kind in supporting me through my capoeira journey in its early days. You've given me some fantastic opportunities to come down and teach with yourself, with students there, and a combination with other people who've come from the area, and some of those great events that you've held yourself, the Batizados. You know, all that exposure and opportunity for myself to be a part of those events and learn from those is greatly appreciated, and can't thank you enough.
Mucho obrigado. Well, thank you very much, and ciao.
Yeah, you take care, Kung Fu. Ciao.